Hi, my name is Goldman. I'm the director and founder of Goldman and Associates. Our firm has a primary focus on family law issues here in Michigan, and today we're going to continue our video series designed to educate and inform the public, so please subscribe to our channel. When we talk about divorce proceedings and custody proceedings, it's always important to have a discussion about how things that go on in life interfere with or interplay with the ultimate decision about who's getting custody. One of those things that's important is the presence of domestic violence. You know, the court has a list of items that it goes through that it analyzes in order to determine what's in the best interest of the child, and one of those many things is the presence of domestic violence. So what happens? How does the court view that? Now, let's say there's a dozen factors. It is one of those factors, but how heavy does it weigh in the analysis? Well, you have a spectrum. On the one hand, you've got domestic violence where there's a spousal abuser, a batterer, an assaulter, somebody who has a violent tendency, somebody's got anger management issues, throwing things at the wife, throwing things at the child. That's the worst case scenario. That is clearly going to have a huge impact on custody if the court has to decide between two of the parents. You got one person with an anger management rage issue and the other one not. Obviously, the kid's going to end up going there for the child's own safety. But on the other end of the domestic violence spectrum, we have people who might have been involved in domestic violence. Child wasn't involved at all. Child didn't witness it. And maybe it was a situation where the parties were arguing and a neighbor called the police. You know, and somebody got charged with domestic violence, but it's a much more benign nature. Maybe it was just raised voices or a little bit of tussling, but nobody was actually battered. Nobody was actually assaulted in that way. And that's on the other end of the spectrum. Is that likely to impact domestic violence? Is that likely to impact custody? I will tell you, if it has an impact, the weight of that factor is probably going to be a lot less than on the other side of the spectrum where we had very heavy domestic violence. So, you know, when you look at these things, you get all sorts of cases. You got the cases where the wife is hitting the husband with a frying pan, versus the cases where the parties are just having a raised voice argument and some neighbor calls the police. So it's clear that the impact on the ultimate custody issue is going to depend on how the court views that domestic violence and whether or not the welfare and well-being of the child will likely be impacted by it. So it's obviously up to the court, and there's no question that there's an analysis to be had on one side of the spectrum. It's easy. On the other side of the spectrum, it's also easy. But all those cases that come in the middle, where maybe there was a little bit of physical violence, and it was intended, but it wasn't in front of the child. Or maybe it was in front of the child, but it was many years ago. And there's been therapy since, and there's been no incident since. So where does that fit in? So obviously you've got a spectrum of how it might impact the case. Your case is going to be different than anybody else's. So if you have questions about how it impacts your case, reach out, and of course we'll be glad to help you out.